As if they don't have too much on their plates. The Kings of Combat Sports Podcast.
Neal.
They'll talk about the things they did that day. They'll analyze the work of Triple H. Rewind to SmackDown. 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 Rewind to SmackDown.
Hello and welcome everybody to what is a free and public edition of Rewind to SmackDown. Free and public, at least even live, for everybody that might be tuning in right now at youtube.com/postwrestling. My name is Wyatt Ting, and I'm joined here for our continuation of WrestleMania week coverage with our man, Neal Flanagan. Hello, Neal.
It is great to be with you, Wyatt. And I've got to start by asking, how's the battery level at this point?
I'm doing all right. You know, I mean, I'm running on very little sleep, you know, especially after like watching two full shows yesterday and recording multiple podcasts already this week. But I don't know. I feel good. I feel energized with like everything that's going on. And like, I'm certainly not bored. You know, that to me, ultimately, ask me again also like in 3 hours, you know, when I'll have hopefully caught up on spring break or Bloodsport. But yeah, I'm definitely in the grind and I'm energized by it. I'm also running on like 3 coffees today.
Yeah, for non-patrons, you should know that Way and John have been doing afternoon shows every day this week, as well as Rewind to Raw, Rewind to Dynamite, and tonight Way's here for Rewind to SmackDown. So I think we're going to keep it as brief as possible, aren't we, Way?
We're going to try to, thus no XL edition of this particular show, but patrons, you will have plenty to be able to listen to because already, as Neal has alluded to, thank you very much for that, Neal. Earlier this afternoon, John Pollock and I recorded our Mark Hitchcock Memorial Show and Death Vegas Invitation reviews. For shows maybe that were two of the more notable ones that took place on Thursday. Tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, John Pollock and I will be back to talk about Bloodsport and also Spring Break. That is your prelude to WrestleMania Night 1, of which John and I will be reviewing live here at youtube.com/postwrestling in the evening. So plenty of you for you guys to listen to that we've released all throughout the week, including our Best of WrestleMania podcast, talking to our friends at Poison Rana about our choices for personal best and worst awards, I guess you could say, you know, for throughout WrestleMania's history. We released an interview with Brandon Thurston talking about some of the latest stories to do with WWE Talent Pay, our preview of WrestleMania 42 altogether, a very extensive one, giving our predictions for what we are expecting for the nights ahead. So a lot that's up there. I want to thank everybody who has given us a chance at postwrestlingcafe.com, taking advantage either of our 50% off sale for new members or just simply jumping back on, you know, for WrestleMania season and enjoying all the content. So thank you, all of you guys. Neal, what have you kind of taken part in thus far, if anything, this week?
Well, I've been watching a lot of wrestling this week, you know, because I've got to just keep informed because a lot of what I've been doing is in print on the site. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, last night I stayed up late. The Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show started, and I thought, well, I may as well just watch this, and I watched the entire thing. So, in my time zone, a sleepy-headed person in the morning, but it was a good show, and I enjoyed the tension because I knew there was something happening, you know. But that cold match being inserted, and then when Ricochet came out, sort of, you know, screaming at the camera about the his partners,
Gates of Agony,
having just arrived, you know, so a bit of drama there.
Yeah, without actually being there, like, I mean, there's so much activity and so much of it can't be seen readily that it kind of feels like, you know, we are there without being there. So it's part of the fun, honestly, of like this particular weekend, especially if you're consuming more than just, you know, what the WWE is producing out there. So with that said, though, we are here to talk about a big edition of SmackDown, the one before WrestleMania, the one true go-home show, maybe you could say, because this featured talent from both Raw and SmackDown, as advertised, Neal. Yeah, massive, of course. And also a very interesting closing segment, I feel, that I'm looking forward to talking about with you, Neal. So we start things off all the way at the beginning here with this opening video that essentially like talks about the history of WrestleMania. It shows clips of their current roster members and celebrities talking about their favorite WrestleMania moments and what WrestleMania means to them. People talking about taking trips to WrestleMania and creating lasting memories and sharing their fandom with their families. I mean, I would say a beautifully produced video package that you might often see, I suppose, maybe going to commercial break, or maybe even on the first night of WrestleMania proper, or on the Barker shows. Rarely on the actual at the start of the SmackDown before. What did you think about the video?
It was fantastically produced video. I'd be surprised if it's not repurposed again. A bit like the going all the way to the other end of the show, a bit like the Lin-Manuel Miranda segment. I fully expect to see that again tomorrow at some point. So I think we'll see this, whether it's on the countdown show or whether it's part of the presentation of the main show or a bumper part for ESPN. I think we'll see it again because this is too good to be just sort of thrown away, I think, as like you said, as a cold open.
Agreed. I mean, WWE, I think we've spoken about for years, has one of the greatest, video production staffs out there. And to me, it's always something that they haven't taken advantage of enough, throughout the weeks of the shows, other than maybe what you might see on the countdowns or like before matches on pay-per-views. So, this to me, I took as maybe another attempt to drive home like a final push towards ticket sales, especially maybe for locals or people that are in the area that might be on the fence. To me, though, it also like achieves setting the stage for what feels like the biggest weekend of the year, the biggest show of the year. I thought this very successfully did that, and I kind of like that the show started off with something like this. As much as I've reached my boiling point for like their propaganda machine this particular week with all of their various celebrity podcast attacks and this and that, still I thought this really hit well.
Me too. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on the Cameron Jey Uso attack?
Not really. These things pass me by largely, and I just see tiny clips of the clips and things like that, or you guys tell me it happened. And it goes to something on this show, even which was Cody's reclaiming of his belt. Really got kind of a one-liner explanation from the commentary desk. What about all the people who did not watch? Cody wrecking the Pat McAfee studio and reclaiming it. Anyway.
I sense that they don't think that there are that many people anymore. Like this show at this point feels it's way more online and way more catering towards like the online diehard fan than to me it ever has. And that's like thanks to Pat McAfee's promos, the content of his promos, and just the knowledge that in order to follow like the story of like, Pat stealing Cody's belt, well, of course you would have seen clips or whatever of Cody Rhodes taking it back.
I was a little surprised they didn't show even a short clip of that happening on this show to follow up from last week, but
it is a bit surprising. I also think I think the show is fully aware and maybe even reacting to like the audience's sort of like hatred of Pat McAfee or feeling that there's too much Pat McAfee on screen. Like this, it was very underplayed, his role on tonight's show. So we start things off here with Pat McAfee, who does show up in the back in his Dodge Ram truck, and Aldis wants him to sign some sort of agreement. I'm not exactly sure what the content of the agreement is. Are you, Neal?
No, this seems to be a bit of a mystery. Handing him an agreement as discussed, he said. Pat then claims he has to read the whole thing because he's a self-made billionaire, which was news to me. But then he signs it anyway.
Yeah, so there's apparently some sort of like agreement. Maybe it might allude to like what his vow to never appear on WWE again if Orton loses. I mean, they didn't really hammer that point home all that hard either. And with rumors that he's going to be in the match at Backlash with Jelly Roll, like I don't know how many people buy that either. So yeah, as Neal says, McAfee says he needs to look it over. Randy interrupts it and says, "Hey guys, talk amongst yourselves. I got to get myself out of here because I have something to say to the people in the audience." And like you said, Pat just signs it anyway. So we start things off here in the ring proper with Randy Orton, who shows up. He's solo, no Pat McAfee by his side. And Orton says, well, first of all, he gets a huge babyface reaction,
Yeah.
and this is important because I think it being Vegas, being much of the same crowd as we're going to get at WrestleMania, I think this is a very direct indication of the type of reaction Cody and Randy will probably get in their match, and we'll talk about Cody's reaction in front of a live audience later on. So he comes out and says, Randy starts off by saying, I'll be the first to admit it, I don't need Pat McAfee. But he says he wants him. He says Pat has been the only person to talk sense into him, and he reveals that he's been talking to Pat for actually quite some time, even while Drew McIntyre was the champion. So Pat was at that point talking Randy up to unleashing his true self. But Randy reminds us of what happened when Cody won the title, making things a bit more complicated. But he also tells us how insulted he was when Cody had the gall to give Randy permission to be himself. He talks about their history together and how Cody has only taken and never given in their relationship. And to support his claims, he brings up examples such as at WrestleMania 40, when Cody needed help to face The Rock and Roman Reigns, he went to Seth Rollins and not Randy Orton. When Cody needed help to face Solo and his bloodline, Randy was the one to step up. When Kevin Owens turned on Randy, Randy stepped up again, only to get pile driven, and his career nearly ended as a result. So, and that was kind of it. First of all, I thought it was very necessary to have Randy come out and talk by himself. Again, I thought Pat McAfee, I think at this point is very much acknowledged, not just by the audience, but by the characters on screen, to have really derailed their story. And so I found this to be an attempt to, again, refresh our memories of what the story was, or what it was supposed to be prior to Pat McAfee's arrival, really bring the focus back onto Randy and Cody's relationship. But I did feel like the supporting arguments for why Orton hates Randy, number one, I didn't think were strong or convincing enough, because I think to only focus on the last 2 years feels like you're leaving a lot of depth on the table for two people who have known each other for 20, right? For a feud that should have been this should have had way more to pull from than any other feud this WrestleMania season. And to only focus on a brief 2-year history, to me, didn't feel like it was taking full advantage of what these two had. And secondly, of course, it felt like it was a little too much too late, This should have been the type of promo he cut the night after he turned heel, with several weeks to maybe let a lot of these points simmer or be built on. Instead, you've got these essentially 5 minutes before the go home show at a time when I think a lot of people have already kind of made up their minds.
Yeah, that's my thoughts exactly, Wade. I sort of felt like this was a taste of what could have been if it wasn't for the Pat McAfee injection into all of this. And it was very interesting because, like you said, this crowd is a really good barometer of what we'll get at Mania itself. Largely, a lot of these ticket holders will be at Mania. I'm sure everyone in attendance tonight, near enough, will be there. And Randy, huge babyface reaction, and not so great a reaction anytime Cody's name is even mentioned at this point. And we'll get to, like you said, the reaction for when Cody actually came out live. And I thought, I just can't help but go back to that and think how much more interesting this would have been as if it was just the two guys delving into their history and how the crowd are going to react. They're loving Randy, listening to the voices in his head and all of that, and reclaiming the Viper. And they're not so sure about Cody be on the other side. And we could have had they could have played into that. They could have gone for some sort of double turn. It could have been a face-face dynamic, something along the lines of Rock and Hogan. Who knows? But all of that has been kind of scuppered because Pat McAfee has been injected into all of this. And we keep being told by people, there are various little sort of comments that are coming out about, well, you've got to see how this story all plays out. Even through Sunday, there's going to be facets to this and all of that. I will believe it when I see it. And I'm very, very open to being proved wrong. I hope I am proved wrong. But as part of the build, at the very least, the McAfee involvement has been a complete dud, a real turn-off. And as much as they like to say, well, he's getting a reaction, people are talking about it. It's just, people talk about bad stuff all the time.
Maybe just on that, there are times where certainly I think let it play out is a valid, response to perhaps like online criticism. But in wrestling, often like what often happens is when there's criticism, they will change course. And so letting it play out, I don't think necessarily applies because you wouldn't arrive at the conclusion that is ultimately satisfying for the audience without hearing that negativity and that criticism in the first place. So anyway, like that's just, a little bit of a pet peeve I have whenever I hear that. So we go to the back. Pat is in the truck, waits for Orton. He says good work, and he tells Aldis that he'll put in a good word for him to the higher ups. So again, alluding to this like TKO higher power that has placed him in this situation, which Cody later will continue to reference as well. We get our first match of the evening. It is our street fight between the MFTs and the Wyatt family. This has at least been reported to be the blow-off to this never-ending feud. I suppose we shall let it play out, Neal, to see if that is in fact the case. The lantern is not even at stake here, and that's totally fine because nobody cared about it anyway. We go to commercial relatively quickly, and then we come back here with Gacy and Loomis working together. They deliver a monkey flip into a powerbomb attempted on Tama Tonga, but without really the powerbomb part so much, as Tama just kind of lands short to prevent the impact. Rowan then turns things up with a big tope suicida. He does a Brody Lee tribute taunt as Corey shouts out the big rig while Brody Lee Jr. is about to take the stage at spring break as we speak, or at least a few hours away from it at least. Nikki Cross gets involved with the big plancha to the floor. Solo delivers a splash to Howdy, but it's broken up by Loomis and Gacy with their kendo sticks. This is, of course, a street fight, which means, what do you find on the street?
Kendo sticks.
Kendo sticks, yes. So Tama Tonga then delivers the Tongan twist to Howdy. He sets up for the cutthroat, but Solo Sikoa comes in and instead delivers a Samoan spike, stealing the pin from Tama Tonga. Solo and Tama continue to share a long glance afterwards, deepening the tensions between the two. What did you think about this potential blow-off of this?
I'm just glad it's over away, if indeed it is, and we'll let it play out, like you said. One of my bigger takeaways was before the match even began, the Wyatt's entrance, which was kind of one of the strongest things. The lights go out, the guys in the crowd and girls put their torches on their phones, their flashlights on their phones, and we get the cool entrance. And it just leaves me absolutely cold. No, I don't even think they've got that going for them anymore. So my bigger takeaway from all of this is that the Wyatt Sicks is played out at this point. And I'm sure that doesn't mean that they're going to disappear. For me as a viewer who has to watch it every week, I am so tired of this faction and these characters at this point, and I just don't think it's working anymore. So I'd love to see something else for these folks, but I don't hold out any hope at the moment, because what that would be, I have no idea.
Yeah, like the mystique is totally gone from
completely,
the act, in my opinion. In ring, I mean, Gacy and Loomis are passable. Like, I thought Rowan looked the best in this match, and I really wish he would have been one of the tag team champions that would have, had in-ring action throughout the run. But yeah, I'm not really excited to see any of them wrestling. And as an entrance, it at this point has been done for well over a year, and it hasn't really been built upon. The promos themselves, I think, certainly throughout the SmackDown stay, have been very lacking in any sort of like interest. So yeah, it's a great question about what happens to the Wyatts afterwards. So we go to Priest and Damian Truth. Damian Priest and Truth. Maybe that should be their name. Damian Truth. Damian Truth are in the back. So Truth tells Priest he got them a match against the New Day. I had to figure this out after the fact, because this early portion seemed to get cut off on the segment. So Truth just kind of starts talking about like the New Day for some reason. Priest is like, they're on Raw. How could that be? Well, the only person really asking that question. So they continue this bit where like Truth thinks this win should be easy because Asuka cursed the New Day, because he's mistaken Danhausen for Asuka anyway. He also confuses Grayson Waller for being British. I'm sure you get this a lot, Neal. Australian, British, and Irish accents all blend together to us. So this is terrible, dude. I'm sorry. I can't recap these with any sort of
No, it's dreadful.
pretended interest.
They're just not funny at all. R-Truth can be amusing at times, but the stuff they're giving him of late has just been dire. So the fact that he recognizes Danhausen last week, but he thinks it was Asuka again this week and stuff. It's just not funny. I think shite was the word I wrote on my notes for this.
Shite. Yes. That's Australian, right?
Well, Australian, British, Scottish,
yes, of
Irish, English.
I thought these segments would I thought there was some potential in these segments because I felt like Priest could have used somebody like R-Truth to drag a bit of personality out of him, but it's not done that at all. Like Priest really is just there to act confused. Like, of course we all are. It's a combination of the material, I think, for Truth not really landing and Priest not really having much of a interesting reaction to it that would in some way make me like him more. He's kind of wallpaper to this R-Truth act right now. So we then get a segment of The Miz and Maryse renewing their vows, and Kit Wilson is here to, I guess, officiate. But instead, Danhausen shows up and interrupts. Wilson mistakenly says, "You may now curse the bride," to which Danhausen obliges and curses him, and I guess Maryse too.
Maryse gets cursed, yeah.
Okay, yes, of course. They're all cursed, all of them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it ends with Maryse falling into a cake, of course. And, I mean, I don't know if I should mention this, Neal, because I think we might lose, all our live viewers. But the video is now out on WWE social media, so you can get right on that.
Tessador said this is too good, was the words he used for this. I'm not sure I would agree, but
I'll be right there as soon as this podcast is done. So I guess maybe worth noting that The Miz, I believe, actually married a couple this week. Like, I think he got his marriage license or whatever efficient license and did that, which is what I would assume this backdrop to actually have been for.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Not a difficult thing to do, by the way. In certain states, particularly Nevada, I think it's very easy to get your license to marry people online in about 5 minutes. So.
I don't know if this place still exists, but I would have loved if he and Maryse drove to that drive-through wedding that Stephanie and Triple H went through. Yeah. It was there. Like John and I visited. we did not get married, but we did travel specifically to that place. On a trip at least 10 years ago. Okay, so we get a video for Royce Keys. This was very good. This one, kind of continues off of last week's. He talks about his mother's passing from a fatal overdose in 2021, and it talks about how she never saw her son's dream come true of becoming a pro wrestler. So Royce Keys in this interview appears to be very vulnerable. He's crying, talking about his mother. We see his sister and Mark Henry, who's keyed as Keys' mentor, speak about him being a great example of somebody who works hard and is able to, get out of their situation to make their dreams come true. So this is all really a big setup for tonight's Andre Battle Royal, because there's nobody else who's involved in this Battle Royal that is getting a second of video production that way. So yes, it does kind of telegraph it, but so what? This whole thing is about building Royce Keys, and I thought this video did a tremendous job of it.
Me too. I mean, there's nothing kayfabe about this. This is an entirely sort of almost documentary style talking heads about this guy's real life. Losing his mum to a drug overdose, living, being protected by his grandparents from the trouble outside the house, talking about, I don't know Palo Alto much. It's a place that I associate with Apple. I think that's used to be where they were headquartered. But
now he's from East Palo Alto, which I believe are very distinct areas of the same place.
Yeah, but I mean, it's really great. This was a great piece of filmmaking too. It's just, and his lines about emotions aren't a crutch. If you tap into them, it makes you stronger. So very, very real, quite moving, in fact, in parts.
Yeah,
and of course, you constantly contrast this reality with the horse shit of the Pat McAfee stuff at the beginning. It's quite a. It's quite a screeching turn in the car, to see this, My only question about it is the longevity of this. It certainly gets this guy across as a real character with a history, and, that baby faces him, of course. But in wrestling, I think you need something a little bit more over the top, something a little bit more show business-y, if for want of a better term. So I don't know that this carries him that far, as authentic and wonderful as it is in sort of introducing this person as a three-dimensional human being to the audience, which is rare.
Yeah.
I feel like, I wonder how much steam it has.
Well, I will suggest that, like, what is larger than life about Royce Keys is just him, right? Like, he is like physically way more imposing than even your average WWE wrestler, and maybe that alone will be enough, for him to, like, he is on a roster now that is like full of guys like him, but I do think it's a bit of a unique take to like give this sort of story, this very vulnerable babyface story, to somebody so physically imposing. So we've yet to see how this will kind of like play itself out, or translate to like an in-ring promo, for instance, But I think as a start, for all the time they seem to have maybe made us wait for Keys, I feel like this has been worth the wait,
Yeah.
So Jacob Fatu comes out here up next. He's in a cop car, and he comes out of the cop car and he cuts this entire promo on top of the cop car. This is, of course, in response to Drew McIntyre chaining him up in handcuffs last week. He says he's not ashamed of his past life, and he doesn't live that life anymore. So he tells Drew that putting him in handcuffs last week didn't bother him at all. Even the popo know he's not the same guy anymore. That's what you call the police, right, Neal?
Yeah.
Yes.
Me? Yes, absolutely.
Yes. You told me what the popo meant. I have to ask you. Tomorrow is unsanctioned, which means nobody can save Drew. Jacob says he's put his past life in his rear view, and that's where he'll be putting Drew tomorrow. So I thought it provided a cool little visual for a closing promo. Strong charisma.
Yeah.
Good job from Fatu. What did you think?
It was an excellent promo. It was a good visual. It's a while since we've seen a vehicle drive onto the stage. My logical facet of my brain is kicking in though and saying, what on earth is the Las Vegas Metro Police doing here? Shouldn't they be out, kind of trying to solve crimes and stuff, instead of seemingly standing to attention for Jacob Fatu while he steps on top of their car? But I guess, this is just because they know he doesn't live his life that way anymore. This is a tribute to him in some way.
Maybe he's befriended the police now, like, and like they're so cool. They're like, yeah, hey Jacob, you want to borrow our cars?
Yo, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think it was just for a cool visual. That's
Of
all.
course, yeah. And a very good promo at
It
that.
did look good, yeah. All right. So we got up next in the back, Alexa and Charlotte. Alexa is reflecting on her 2025 run with Charlotte. Charlotte says it was a pretty good year, but the cherry on top would be winning the titles tomorrow. Alexa says they do need to gain momentum ahead of tomorrow's match. So, but also suggests that no matter what, whether or not they win tomorrow, they will still be best friends. So, I mean, anytime you get this sort of like celebration of friendship for no reason, there's some impending doom here. So do you see these two breaking up relatively quickly?
I do, yeah, and I hope they will, because I'm tired of this. Very, very tired, particularly when it's been across both shows, both of the main roster shows, for so long.
Yeah, like there was a time about a year ago where there was a real spark to Charlotte after WrestleMania, and that Players Tribune article came out, and these crowds were reacting crazy for her. But I feel like that's long gone now. And in its place, we've had this tag team that has just kind of existed without any real direction. Instead, just a lot of like some of the worst backstage segments I feel we've seen all year from the two. So I certainly hope it's the end, because creatively, I think this has been bankrupt for quite a while. We shall see if a feud between the two will be any more satisfying, if that is in fact where they're going, because that's certainly the expectation.
And even after all this time, they just still don't vibe well together, whereas Lash and Nia almost immediately sort of clicked and have that charisma and somewhat amusing and all of those things. And these two have never reached that level.
I have zero doubt that off screen, they might be hilarious together. They might be amazing together. But on screen, whoever is responsible for the verbiage and their own delivery of it has just been completely terrible. It's been forced. It hasn't felt. It hasn't
and
been
the
funny.
gimmicks of, I'm okay, I promise I'm okay, while they're eating the ice cream and stuff. It's just cheesy.
So we got our WrestleMania stage reveal, or we got our WrestleMania stage reveal earlier, and WWE invited over 30 content creators from YouTube for this reveal. So, any thoughts on the set? Does this rank among your favorite WrestleMania sets?
Definitely not. No, I mean it's pretty impressive as anything. When they have these gigantic screens and lighting and pyro and stuff, it always looks great. And I kind of like the aesthetic of the sort of post-apocalyptic thing, but yeah, it's not among my favorite Mania sets by any stretch.
I think it looks good. Yeah. It's really big. It's very nice. I like it. Yeah. I can't say I have a strong reaction to it either way. The idea that it's like, is this post-apocalyptic? Is it?
I don't know. Some of the match graphics have that kind of back in the background of the people in the match. There's this sort of almost
Night one is
wasteland.
post-apocalyptic. Night two is futuristic. Okay, so after the apocalypse, we get our beautiful sort of like neon future.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Post Pat McAfee.
Yeah. So it's nice. It's nice. It feels like a WrestleMania set. Yeah. Okay.
Of course, yeah.
All right. What do the influencers think? All right. That's the main thing. For the tag titles, we got up next a match that I didn't know was actually happening until it was happening because, again, the early segment did a very poor job communicating this. This is Damian Priest and R-Truth taking on the New Day for the WWE Tag Team Championships that are defended on SmackDown. How, I guess, because R-Truth just, asked for it. So, anyway. So, Kofi comes out. He's taking fans' replica titles that are ringside and dropping them onto the floor. So, of course, he's a heel. Truth leads a New Day Rocks chant from the apron at one point as he reaches for the hot tag from Kofi Kingston, his opponent. So, Kofi does tag him, and Truth ends up attacking Kofi, setting up the 5-knuckle shuffle with Damian Priest, encouraging Priest to join after some hesitation. And they end things with the flapjack into a reverse STO for the win. Yeah, so that was the match. Not much of one. Truth's shtick, I can maybe say is still certainly over, but I felt like the reactions have been maybe more and more mild since, they've won the championships. Priest to me is a total background player here, but to me, the bigger conversation point is Kofi Kingston, because it's quite unfathomable to me that this is the same guy that was responsible for Kofi Mania 7 years ago. He's just instead in a completely forgettable spot at this show.
And on his home show, Raw, he's been relegated to the international commercial spots for a really long time as well. An afterthought, and the match, while it was solid enough, really gave me house show vibes. As somebody who's been to the local arena in Belfast for the Euro tours many times, this is the sort of match that they'll give you to kind of get a reaction from the crowd. So it really gave me that, particularly as it was a completely cold match. Like you said, I was in the same boat until these entrances. I wasn't clear on who their opponents were going to be from that earlier backstage promo. But yeah, Kofi has, how the mighty have fallen.
Jade Cargill comes out. She is reunited with B-Fab and Michin, but Rhea Ripley quickly interrupts, and she accuses Jade of hiding from her ever since she won the chamber. You've been hiding behind B-Fab and Michin. You've been hiding behind social media. She gives Jade one final chance to say something to her face alone. So Jade takes the mic. She says she is not scared of some cosplay goth kid. Rhea is everything Jade wishes she could be, a real bitch. She says Rhea says she has not. She's been Jade says she's been sparing Rhea, and on Sunday she's putting belt to ass. Rhea says her insecurities don't hold her back. They're the reason why she's a multi-time champion. She calls Jade a narcissistic, selfish, fake-ass bitch. And Jade, of course, has to end the segment by throwing one more in there. She says, off mic, "I'll see you Sunday, bitch." So.
Yeah. This is what way, again, this is our off air life way, isn't it? You call me a narcissistic, selfish, fake-ass bitch just before we come on air, just to put me in my place as the B, as the B player.
I recognize of everybody, Jade, maybe it's Jade's thing, to call people bitches. But all I ask is, can't we change it up a bit, okay? like back in my day, like, you know, we call each other like crack whores or like sluts, you know, like maybe throw a
Yeah.
few just some variation here. But overall, I felt like pretty good intensity between these two in this final segment. What did you think?
I did too. Although I did notice a bit of a stumble, a very rare one, I think, from Rhea quite early on in this, where she's still on the apron at this point, and she says something like, "I'm normally a patient person, but," and then there's this almighty gap, and Jade kind of plays into it a little bit, kind of what, and she did seem to forget what she was supposed to say next for a moment. It was very, very unlike Rhea, but taking everything into account, a solid go home segment for these
So
guys.
no Io and Kyrie or Asuka here at this point doesn't
No,
mean that they won't maybe have some role in this match, perhaps. Maybe we will take some time a bit later on to address maybe what new developments may be taking place in the women's tag team match that may have had some sort of like attachment to some of this a little bit later on. So we see the MFTs in the back. Solo says that they have won as a team, something Tama, visually seems to disagree with. Solo wants to prepare Tala Tonga for the Andre Battle Royal tonight. He also wants them, Tama and I guess Jeff Cobb or the others, to focus on the tag team titles, which prompts more glances between Tama and Solo. So these two really don't like each other, or at least Tama doesn't really like Solo, and they really want us to know that. Any thoughts?
not really. It's the same thing every week. And honestly, this week I thought like Tama didn't really have a right to be annoyed. Like this was a street, earlier on, the conclusion of the street fight. Who cares who gets the finish, if you are a team. But anyway.
I mean, they are certainly pushing the idea that like, after what like Nakamura has said, questioning whether or not Tama can be successful by himself. I mean, they're trying to show us that Tama really wants to break out on his own. So
Sure.
we'll see how that plays later. We get our next match here. This is Tiffany Stratton versus Jordynne Grace in a U.S. title #1 contenders match. This was originally billed to be Tiffany Stratton versus Julia for the U.S. Championship. So I guess they're deciding to pace this a little bit by doing this #1 contenders match instead. Worth noting that Grace just returned last week on main event from an ankle injury she suffered back in March.
Yeah.
So we got Julie and James watching ringside to see who they will face next. And man, I have to say, of all the generic theme songs on this roster, I really do think Jordynne Grace is maybe the most forgettable of them all.
Yeah. And it didn't help that this was after a break. So we had Tiffany's theme, which, I mean, you can think what you want about, but it's all right, compared to Jordynne Grace's. A couple of times, so the crowd were waiting for like 3 minutes or something. And then, of course, it was crickets when this music played because like people are, I think, what is this? Who is this?
It's like, think of the most generic, like, I don't know, like rights free, like rock track, you could attach to anybody, but with some random man saying it's not over until I win at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was originally on like the sort of copyright free track or whatever they use, wherever they found this, but like, or if somebody like just had the idea that said, you know what, like this is not hitting enough. Let's add a random man saying it's not over until I win. That I think will make this feel appropriate for television. So
The norm would be to have someone screaming her name at the start and then the sort of random generic thing starts.
it's not even her catchphrase, is it? Does she even have
No,
it? Like,
I don't
yeah,
think she has one.
like I don't know why
I know
they.
she's the juggernaut. We know some various, kind of things like that, but I don't know if there's any kind of catchphrase.
I have no idea why they would have dropped like the sirens, like even if you weren't going to keep her old theme, like at least like attach the sirens to her. I know she doesn't have in WWE the attachment to Scott Steiner that she did in
Yeah.
TNA, but it's still at least something recognizable, and you could make the explanation a little bit later. Although, does Braun Breaker have sirens? Maybe? No. I mean, whatever. You could have more.
I'm
more
not
than-
sure. Yeah, I think he did at one time, but his music has changed up. Someone will know. But
Jordynne Grace is as much of a Steiner as Braun Breaker is. Okay, neither of them have the same last name anyway. So anyway, so that's a little rant on Jordan Grace's theme song. So Graves does interestingly sort of spell out the perceived disappointment in Stratton's lack of Mania role this year. How she went from defending the world title last year to now being on the SmackDown before WrestleMania, challenging for the U.S. title in a qualifier. So, of course, like what do you take from that, Neal, as any sort of like indicator of how successful her title run was, or beyond? What do you think?
I don't particularly think it's a massive knock on her title run, which I thought was solid enough. I just think it's sometimes you move up and down the card, and this was Tiffany's time where maybe creative, just because the character is okay. We've got this kind of she was the daddy's girl, sort of started off as the heel, and then when she moved into the babyface territory, there really wasn't much development. It was just kind of beyond it's Tiffy time and pointing at her wrist. There's not a lot to say, about who this person is. They had the big sort of Mattel gigantic doll boxes at Mania when she was on the show, but I feel that's where they need to concentrate, perhaps on beefing up who this character is. So I think it's more on the creative than on her.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like last year she kind of got her briefcase and then the eventual title win because she was like hot enough and maybe the best pick of the litter at that point, but that was also a time before the US Championship, and to me, like, her talents and her abilities and her overness by that point would have been a lot more appropriate for something like the US Championship, or she could have continued building that depth of character and building some further identity before actually being launched into like a bigger spotlight with that World Championship. Instead, she's kind of now gone through this world title, so she doesn't really have that chase story at least so fresh anymore. And instead, they're just much more interesting characters, which leaves Tiffany Stratton without a spot on the show. Not to mention like whatever like time off she might have taken due to injury and all that. So
I think the time off's a big factor too, because if you look at the main women's title on this show, it's the WWE women's title, and that scene has been pretty bereft until Rhea, became the challenger. It was Jade against, a lot of mid-carders really.
But it does offer like some form of redemption story for Tiffany Stratton to be able to tell going towards next year's WrestleMania, which I hope they navigate. So the match here, the finish comes after Grace delivers a package powerbomb for a 2 count. Stratton escapes a vertebreaker attempt and then hits the prettiest moonsault ever for the victory. And, I thought Grace looked pretty decent here. But, she is another person who I think has suffered from lack of creative here. She was in the same class, being called up as like Trick and Oba and Javon, and is by far the weakest of the bunch, with almost like very little effort put towards her first title match against Jade Cargill in a very forgettable feud, if you can even call it that. Did not feel special here, so I hope I hope they can change course with that.
They somewhat acknowledged that too, saying that she had limited success since her call up and had been back to PC, to try and work on new moves and stuff like that. This is all kayfabe, but they were trying to at least acknowledge that she's trying to climb the ladder and make more of a name for herself. The match itself, I did think was pretty good, and certainly much better than Stratton's last outing, which was the match against Julia that she lost, which was a mess.
And
from 3 weeks ago.
How did she lose, by the way? Was it through nefarious means? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I think Kiana got involved, but I just remember so many botches in the match that it was, that was what was much more memorable to me. It broke apart. It really fell apart.
So we'll see if they do better in the next match that's coming up between the two of them. So Trick Williams comes out next. And there's no Little Yachty, who, of course, is selling the haluva kick from Sami Zayn. Trick comes out saying Sami crossed the line last week and shows us footage of the Yachty haluva kick. He says he doesn't know when Yachty will be back. So, I mean, I don't know if this is hinting towards Yachty not appearing at WrestleMania or what, But Trick does say, you did something worse than hurting my friend. You hurt Trick Williams' WrestleMania entrance, which I thought was very funny. Like, it's to me the type of thing that shows that he he is still a tweener, as beloved as he is, which kind of makes the audience like him more. The fact that he is a bit of an asshole, so here revealing that he doesn't even care so much about his friend as much as he cares about his WrestleMania entrance being heard here. So he does call Sami out, and all of this, of course, is a setup for a man in a gingerbread man outfit. So out comes Gingerbread. Trick says, Sami, if you're upset about there being no diehard Sami Zayn fans either last week or tonight, well, I mean, maybe they're in all at Drury Lane. So
Yes.
Trick yeah.
I normally hate this sort of stuff, and it was I'm just thinking Vince McMahon, the moment that this guy walks out, Vince would be like pissing his pants with laughter at this. But some of the humor here was actually quite funny, where it did make me laugh when this guy with the permanent smile on his, fake head was told by Trick that you look upset, stuff like that. I don't know. Trick's just so good. I think that he can make segments like this work. I enjoyed this.
To me, it worked, especially like since Trick found it funnier than like I think the actual jokes might have been.
Yeah.
Anyway. Well, at this point, he actually gets serious, and he says this is his first WrestleMania that's coming up, and he pretty much rallies the crowd behind a "whoop that Trick" chant. Total babyface here for Trick. Babyface reaction for Trick. And out comes Sami, who comes out to no music, of course, and this crowd heavily boos. Sami wishes that he could be having as much fun as Trick, but he's not, and it doesn't sound like the fans are either, acknowledging the fans' dislike of him. The fans at this point start chanting something I can't quite make out, but Sami says he still doesn't know what he did wrong. And he says he doesn't care, reiterating that he is doing this for his ride or die fans, which at this point has become a heel line. Just the mere mention of like somebody like Sami Zayn merely mentioning the idea of ride or die fans is amusingly just like enough to garner a negative reaction. So Zayn continues calling out for his ride or die fans, and now he gets shut the fuck up chants. Zayn says all Trick has shown him these months is that he's got a great entrance and can drop a good diss track, but he doesn't see the future in him. He sees a little punk rookie with no plan. Trick tells Sami that he is the plan, calls Sami out for having to find himself over these past weeks. He says, now you're even combing your hair. Your breath is smelling like bounce that ass. No water bottle is safe backstage because you don't know how to find Sami Zayn no more. Sami Zayn used to be respected, but he threw all of that away because a rookie got into his head. Trick again calls him the Gingerbread Man, and this is enough for Sami to initiate a brawl. Trick ultimately knocking him down with their first exchange, but Sami then sending Trick out of the ring. This leaves Sami in the ring alone with the Gingerbread Man. And Sami haluva kicks the Gingerbread Man, twisting the head beautifully all the way around on this Gingerbread Man.
Yeah, that you couldn't script that. It was wonderful.
I wonder who we will hear about later on that actually played this guy. Maybe it was like, I don't know, like Zack Sabre Jr. How else would you explain this great coordination here? So this was enough to cause a distraction to Sami Zayn, allowing Trick to end the segment with the Trick shot and holding up the championship. So this has certainly been, Neal, one of the better built programs this WrestleMania. I feel like you would agree. One so effective that this crowd has already turned these guys before. I think the story was ready to. But what did you think about this goal?
Yeah, the crowd were a few weeks ahead of the story writers for this. But I have really enjoyed the Sami arc. I still think that he's really entertaining. Sami has been in various kinds of heels, at times. And although he's a bit of a born babyface, I like this direction where he's kind of, he's somewhat delusional now. There's this, on one hand, he's only doing what Cody told him to do, which is, to kind of like get a bit more aggressive, go after what he wanted. And how come that's okay for others but not for him? And then the other, he's delusional about these ride or die fans who aren't really there. But he can be funny too, like, because he was telling the Gingerbread
ride or die is hilarious coming from like Sami Zayn or somebody who would never use that verbiage.
Use that phrase.
Yeah,
and even just telling the Gingerbread Man to like go away, and the guy put his hand, the guy in the costume put his hands on his hips, and he says, no, not hands on hips, that's worse. Just go. So I chuckled quite a bit throughout this. It's a great character work from both. Wonderful promo stuff from Trick. Whatever they give him to deliver, he just does so well. And I think all that stuff about Sami crashing out backstage and no water bottle being safe is the sort of things that we have been saying, you know. So it's just great material, wonderfully delivered.
Yeah, Trick is, you know, able to sound really cocky, but at the same time, very determined and just like more than anything, incredibly cool. And like they have a great understanding of, I think, what makes him a babyface, and they're not making him too pandering just yet, you know. So he's showing like a really strong, I dare I say, rock level charisma, you know, at this very early stage of his main roster run, which is very promising for the rest of it. I was grateful that Yachty wasn't here to maybe confuse things too much, because I thought he was a detriment last week, even though maybe a necessary part of the angle. We shall see if he has any place on the actual card tomorrow or Sunday. Sunday is this match. So does it confirm to you, like, the way this segment ends, who might be winning this particular match? What do you think is the outcome of the match itself?
I know that you and John had different opinions on who will win this match, and I find that interesting, because for me, it would be time to crown Trick, and that's my first sort of gut reaction. On the other hand, I think, now, which of you said you thought Sami would retain? John?
Me.
You did?
Yeah.
Your argument was sort of, you know, could persuade me as well. So I do think it's interesting, because you could absolutely keep the title on Sami and keep this going for a while. There are legs in it. On the other hand, if Trick gets the title, you know, what do you do next? Do you go straight back to Sami, or do you move? You know, I'm interested in that too, because this has been a good program. And I think that's why I'm sort of on the fence. It's more likely to continue.
I don't
if
think
Sami retains, and I think, you know, that it will continue. So who knows?
Of course, I understand the desire to quote unquote make Trick, you know, on a big stage by giving him that big moment. But I also think it's just as important to make the heel version of Sami Zayn by showing that he could be successful through fully embracing, you know, his dark side. And I think Trick still has plenty of time to actually get that big moment on a big stage like a WrestleMania, that I don't think they'd be squandering, you know, by delaying slightly here. If anything, just for maybe a rematch or like a bigger chase. And you know, there are ways to get around the finish to protect him, of course. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's go. We go up next to, oh man, the commercial-free third hour of SmackDown that is taking place up next here, and we get a tag title, women's tag title video, where we hear from Brie Bella, who acknowledges that her sister is fighting through an injury. She says she's still going to be showing up. And Slim Seaver in the chat, we are not, of course, watching the red carpet for the Hall of Fame ceremony, but it is taking place right now. And Slim Seaver says, I haven't confirmed this yet, but he says that Nikki Bella on the Hall of Fame red carpet says she will be at Mania tomorrow going for the tag titles. And I feel at this point, maybe we should like delve into something that could be considered spoiler territory. So maybe skip ahead, like, I don't know, 3 minutes if you don't want to listen to it. But earlier in the day, of course, we had a report from PW Insider who said that Nikki Bella did not clear her medicals and will not be cleared for her ankle injury for WrestleMania. PW Insider also reported that Paige Saraya has been signed to WWE and was even spotted at rehearsals for this women's Fatal 4-Way, potentially as a partner replacement for Nikki Bella. Any thoughts on any of that?
It's a fairly reliable source of reporting, so I buy into it. We sort of re-reported it as, you know, in that way. And I feel if Nikki, you know, Nikki has to say this, if there's to be an angle, it looks like, where Paige comes out, perhaps, you know, to a big pop as the replacement. So what we might perhaps get, and I'm just, of course, guessing as anyone would be, Nikki comes out, the Bellas come out, and we think Nikki maybe hobbles to the ring, but is immediately kind of taken out in some way that doesn't destroy her leg, you know, in a careful kind of way, and therefore needs replacing. And then we can get the big entrance for Paige, the big surprise entrance. Could be something like that. that we get. But clearly they want to keep it under wraps. So for now, they're saying that the Bellas are going to be good to go.
Yeah. But news spreads fast, and I feel like the anticipation will be really like strongly there, which isn't a bad thing. Like, look at Cody's debut. You know, it's like the moment should be big whenever she actually comes out, and you know, it should be very heartwarming for many people. The way I think, you know, her AEW return was initially for a lot of people. How maybe we'll save the conversation about, like, you know, Paige in a further WWE run a little bit later on, but you know, this could be setting up one of the bigger moments of the entire show.
It's a little unlike them to allow a rehearsal to be seen in this way. You know, we all remember the Hardys surprise appearance and the lengths they often go to keep those things secret. So I'm a little bit surprised this is leaked, but it has, and we know about it. So.
We go up next to the match itself for tonight, which is Charlotte and Alexa taking on Bayley and Lyra, and it was not much of a match, unfortunately, because like most of the program here, Nia and Lash just come out to attack, and I mean, there's no bell called here to signal the end of this match. The ref at this point is just like, he's had enough, you know, knowing how this build collectively has been. So the ref just leaves, and you know, the irresistible forces do their leg drop finisher to close the segment. No Brie Bella coming out here tonight.
No,
nothing.
We didn't even really get to who the legal starting pair were. You're right. The bell went, and they just all attacked each other. Then
the ref's just like, fuck this. You know, why even try?
Nia and Lash appear, and it's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. I'm kind of glad. I preferred this very brief little brawl to another match.
Yeah.
Of, you know, the combination of these teams. These have been endless.
We get another hype video, this one for Brock Lesnar and Oba Femi. What did you think about this one?
Very good, and another one I can see them reusing tomorrow. If not on the main show, certainly on the countdown show. This sort of, you know, the various chapters, and, you know, the time before man, they were titans and all this sort of verbiage. It was very dramatic.
Very grand, very epic, and I mean, I would say more than effective in, you know, reminding us that this match would be happening. Honestly, a tail of the tape, I think, would have, you know, even been enough for many people who might be looking forward to this match the most out of any of them. So this one is on the ESPN kickoff show, the first match on night 2, I believe. Yeah. We got our Andre Battle Royal that's up next, and you know, a bunch of guys are already starting in the ring, of course, but of the 2 people to actually get entrances, we had Royce Keys here, who gets a, you know, like a big entrance here, and Joe Hendry gets the other one. Do you think this signaled anything of an official call up for Joe Hendry?
I don't at this point. I mean, I don't think it isn't either. It's a 50-50 proposition for me. I don't know, and I hate to say it, but I don't know what spot Joe Hendry occupies. You know, when he does get called up, I just see him slotted in as another Matt Cardona type figure at this point. You say his name and he appears gimmick, I think is sort of, again, played out somewhat, to use the phrase I used about the Wyatts, and I don't know how long it has any longevity on the main roster. So I worry a bit about Joe Hendry. I feel he probably will get called up, but I don't know what his longevity is going to be on the main roster.
I feel like he might have some of the appeal of maybe a Danhausen, in that, like, audience really loves the shtick, but I actually see a lot more sort of like, you know, variation in what Danhausen is able to do versus maybe what Joe Hendry has been able to do. Now, like, they did give him what I feel was a very good attempt at an audition to flesh out what his offerings are through this NXT title reign, but I can't say it was that compelling, you know, and nor like was I all that much more inspired for him to tell further stories. But you often can't tell. Like, some guys are just going to get over way more on the main roster than they even did in NXT. He didn't do a bad job at NXT, but I guess I wasn't just so inspired or clamoring to see more of him on the main roster. But we'll see. He continues to get some of the bigger reactions, at least certainly in this match.
I think the issues with him is he's not the finest in-ring worker, you know, on the roster. So he's they lean quite heavily into the fact that he can manifest when people say his name, but Danhausen, as you say, does that better and more, more entertainingly. Or the fact that he writes songs, and those concerts, as we saw with Elias, those things have a shelf life too. So, I like the guy. I worry a little for what his spot is going to ultimately be.
So we've got Joe Hendry, Royce Keys, Ludwig Kaiser, Psycho Clown, Ray Phoenix, Matt Cardona, Axiom, Angel, Berto, Joaquin Wilde, Apollo Cruz, Shinsuke Nakamura, Kit Wilson, Chad Gable, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, Akira Tozawa, Shiloh Hill, Nathan Frazier, La Parka, Aleister Black, Otis, Talatonga, Cruz del Toro, and laying face down Johnny Gargano in this match. 25 names or so by my count, with Shiloh Hill, Joe Hendry, Psycho Clown, and La Parka being your off-roster names. So Johnny Gargano, of course, is lying down, so Kit Wilson trips over him for our first elimination, referencing the Danhausen curse. Gargano then comes alive, eliminating both Sabin and Frazier. The Americanos tease taking each other's mask off before Talatonga throws them both out. The Garzas eliminate La Parka. Psycho Clown does his face tear to, I would say, quite little reaction here on SmackDown before being eliminated by Royce Keys. At this point, Aleister Black eliminates Joe Hendry, which might have been the biggest reaction up until this point. Hendry's elimination. Talatonga eliminates a bunch of guys, and all the mid-carders team up against him. Black gets a bunch of eliminations. Otis gets some shine, so we are left with our final four. Otis, Aleister Black, Royce Keys, and Talatonga. Keys eliminates Black, leaving the three big men remaining. Tala takes Otis out, and Keys avoids a choke slam from Talatonga, hits the spine buster, eliminating Talatonga to become your Andre the Giant Battle Royal winner.
Yeah, the big one. In the moment, it gives Royce Keys something, which is definitely better than nothing. And they've done pretty good work, as we talked earlier, with the vignettes this week and last week. I think ultimately, though, the Andre the Giant Memorial Trophy holder, it's an absolute flash in the pan. In a week or two, people will not be talking about it. Even if the trophy even turns up again next week, I'll be kind of surprised. But it gives him a moment on WrestleMania week, which is a lot better than nothing. The other thing that sort of struck me about this is that Otis, who's been a background player for so long at this point, with Tozawa, the crowd were really getting behind Otis in the moments where he got his shine in the final three, and there were, I think maybe the biggest reaction boo-wise was when he got eliminated by Tala.
Otis is able to stay a fan favorite. I mean, there's just something very attractive, I suppose, about what he represents, and but I just don't get the sense like Paul Levesque has ever seen so much in him. Like, I think Vince McMahon took a weird liking to the idea of like a guy like that being able to get a Mandy Rose, like even gave him Money in the Bank at one point. But I don't know if there was anything more to it than maybe that sort of gag. And I personally don't think Levesque sees much in him beyond like a comedy guy. So yeah, I don't disagree with what you say about the Andre Battle Royal, but I will say, like, of everybody in this field, like, it benefits Royce Keys more than it would anybody else. And
for sure,
it's not a gimmick that will set somebody up for a main event role or even like an IC level role, but I think it's a relatively strong gimmick to launch somebody onto the roster, which I think we're still at with Keys, in conjunction with the video packages and everything, of course. So we go to our final segment for the go home episode of SmackDown before WrestleMania, and we got Cody Rhodes coming out here. He is out. He is here to respond. Well, I guess not exactly respond. Certainly not to Pat McAfee, but I guess to Randy Orton. The reaction to Cody Rhodes in Vegas. What did you think, Neal?
Interesting. Even from the drum beats, the part of before the theme really kicks in, there were boos here. And that's so interesting to me because, again, if Pat had never been inserted into this feud, you could imagine him being roundly and much more soundly booed by now. Because if Pat's supposed to be some sort of heat getter for Randy, that hasn't worked. And if to any extent that it has worked, this would have been at this stage, without McAfee, Randy the firm favorite, and Cody not a heel, but the one that the crowd don't want. The crowd that the crowd don't want to cheer. Now I know, and WrestleMania crowds are sometimes different from weekly TV crowds, and that would have been repairable. But I think it would have at least been interesting.
I think he's going to get booed out of the building. I think from the start of the match, this is going to be an entirely pro Randy Orton crowd, negative Cody Rhodes crowd, and I'm just, like, to me, like, I feel like this little bit of reaction in the SmackDown arena, like, confirms it. Like, most of these crowds that we've seen throughout the year have, despite maybe some negative sentiment towards Cody, they've been pretty supportive, or at least like not as vocal. I thought it was louder than usual tonight, or at least like quieter than usual, if you want to say that. And I don't know, I just think given the setting, that will be amplified somewhat, which is very interesting to me, because this Pat McAfee stuff, you would think may have at least softened things for him.
Mm-hmm.
It has not at all. Like, I think this crowd just will want to see Randy Orton win a lot more than Cody Rhodes. You're also talking about like WrestleMania crowds, which for some reason, like, I don't think this is unprecedented. I mean, like, look at Rock and Hogan, like, that's granted it's Toronto, but like, you're talking about like an arena of like diehard fans, who have paid a lot of money to probably cheer what they want. It's not unfathomable to think they will go against the grain that hard with story and cheer for who they want. So
I think what maybe is slightly interesting about it is that in recent years, in the last, maybe from, what they call now the Paul Levesque era, the last 3 Manias or so, the crowds have been a bit more compliant, it feels like.
The stories have been better.
Well, for that very reason. Yeah.
Last year aside, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes. But we haven't had the crowds rebelling so much at Mania season, which is when you do get that, especially when we had those Raw after Manias, where in the late, in 2019, 2020, that kind of period where the show was just completely taken over.
Yeah. Now, I don't exactly know if this is not something that they invite themselves, because Cody in this moment kind of looks at the crowd surprisingly as if to, again, acknowledge it, and he kind of almost milks the reaction for a beat. So, this could be all playing into what they ultimately want for Cody, or at least they're not necessarily shying away from it. Cody says that he's not here to talk about the conspiracy theory that somebody has been after him for these past 3 WrestleManias, whether it be the final boss, Travis Scott last year, which still elicits a pretty strong reaction from this crowd, or the person he won't name but should go home this year. So again, building to what feels like the ultimate destination for Cody, a WrestleMania main event against Ari Emanuel.
Yeah, in a week where we had an interview with Nick Khan, who said he will never, ever, ever be an on-screen character. So it's very hard to imagine Ari Emanuel taking that slot when he's less known, I would say, because he's never at the events. But Nick, you will see sometimes in the camera side front row. This continues to be a perplexing sort of integration of the TKO management structure into the story.
Very much so. But one you have to think would result in some sort of major reveal, like potentially as early as tomorrow. Like, what do you think? When are we going to get the payoff to something that clearly Cody has been building, very hard now?
I feel there's something up their sleeve at this point in that regard. It may be, of course, the most well-known member of the TKO board is The Rock. Mm-hmm. He has the unfortunate effect of overshadowing everyone else. And we remember the build where he was with Roman all the time, and Roman felt very diminished beside him. I felt in that build, even though the Mania that followed was great. I don't know. Could it be Dwayne? Perhaps. It's if there's to be an appearance, that is. Otherwise, I don't know what the payoff is. Ari Emanuel, if he were to appear, and I know you're joking about that, like people, half the crowd will be like, "Who's he? What's going on with this?" So I do think they must have something better up their sleeve than simply Pat McAfee, though. I certainly hope so.
So Cody says all of this comes with the territory. He says says Cody only takes, which is funny because Randy has never taken responsibility for his actions. He says in 2009, Orton burned everything in his path only to lose at WrestleMania. And before he could go on, he gets cut off by the World Heavyweight Champion from Raw, CM Punk, who's of course already dressed in his Hall of Fame suit and sneakers. Cody jokingly asks if Punk is here to turn on him too. But Punk says this is the first time he's worn a suit on WWE TV since Teddy Long's wedding, and he says that because they have a lot of history together. Punk just wanted to come out to relish in the fact that they're both champions headlining WrestleMania. He says he can't give Cody advice because Cody at this point has already done things Punk has never accomplished, and says win, lose, or draw, they will both be there, and no matter what. They will both be there on Monday, I believe he specifically said. Yes. And no matter what, he is proud of Cody. Cody says that he has something to share with Punk too. He says Punk is up against the most dominant main eventer in the game, the OTC. And he reminds us all of Punk's journey to how he got here. He says Punk was signed at a time when WWE wasn't signing guys like him, and WWE wanted him so badly he even got to keep his name. Then he went away for 10 years, and this crowd just kept chanting his name. Punk did not come back only delivering the greatest hits. He has come back better than ever. And he starts making comparisons to Shawn Michaels and suggests how Punk may be gunning to become the new Mr. WrestleMania. He thanks Punk for everything he's taught him and goes for a warm embrace. And we hear that sort of almost signature Cody voice crack as Cody tells Punk that his dad would have been extremely proud of him. His dad, referring to Dusty Rhodes, not Punk's dad. And he also says he loves him. And the music plays. We see our Film Nevada logo pop up, the Paul Levesque signature. But Punk calls for the music to be cut. He says he doesn't want to cry to close the show and instead rallies the crowd with a celebration as he heads towards the crowd to pose with their championships. This was not the go-home segment I would have expected on the night prior to WrestleMania, Neal.
No, this was deeply weird to me. It felt like... I wonder, and I'm really interested in your takeaway and what they were trying to achieve here. This was pure two baby faces kind of amping each other up, giving each other a bit of a shine. You're wonderful. You're here every week, and you're you're going to be Mr. WrestleMania. I mean, that's way too much. Like, you're going to take the moniker of Mr. WrestleMania. If the intent here was just to kind of really buff up and shine the two baby faces, it didn't do that to me. It particularly because Cody isn't getting that reaction from the crowd. Maybe they expected that he would, but I don't know. It really just felt like a way to shoehorn Punk into this show for the go home to Mania, the two champions together. I just thought it just came off as odd.
I found it very, odd and also very fascinating to use like arguably one of the more sort of like critical segments of the entire year on this rather than like, like maybe some sort of built towards like you would expect Cody versus Randy here. Like pull aparts they have kind of done to death. So I'm certainly grateful they did do that. But I also have to think about like maybe just like what the sort of context of this episode maybe. You're dealing with a lot of negativity and a lot of backlash towards this whole Pat McAfee story. Minimal Pat McAfee even presence on the show. Certainly not in this segment. They don't even mention his name, but of course they do, allude to him. But this almost felt like a way to remind everybody, like, hey, this is a really good show with two really good guys that you guys really like. So maybe let's not talk so much about the Pat McAfee stuff and remind us why we should be interested in WrestleMania tomorrow. There might be an element of that. I also think it gave us one perhaps final moment of these two being the champions on the show, which may directly contrast to Monday's scene where they will probably appear without their championships down in the dumps and maybe, setting off their next storyline with TKO.
Oh God, that's a terrifying thought. And I mean, I certainly think Cody is dropping that belt. I'm not entirely convinced, although I'm leaning towards the fact that Roman wins as well. So in that respect, yeah, I mean, and for those who aren't listening but watching on YouTube, Way has the still of the two of them holding their gold over their shoulder. Yeah, that could be a visual that is the last time we see it. I don't know. I also think there's something in what you say about the fact that these are two regular full-time roster people, not celebrities, and they don't have celebrities hangers on with them. So maybe it's a sense of going into WrestleMania to say, yes, yeah, we've got, Pat McAfee's involved, ISO Speed is involved, Jerry Rule's probably going to be involved, et cetera, but these are our main guys. These are our top guys, and they're wrestlers, not celebrities. So I don't know, but it did just feel very strange. The interaction between the two didn't even really feel that authentic to me.
Of course, it did have the effect of being able to promote both of their main events that are coming up, across the both nights, rather than just maybe focusing on Cody versus Randy. Nate Milton in the chat room suggests that it's also a potential preview for next year's WrestleMania in Saudi. Absolutely, we have to take that into account as well. So, a very interesting way to close the show, but not exactly maybe close the show, because to actually close the show, we had our video package from Lin-Manuel Miranda, who, which I believe is going to be the opening video package to the nights of WrestleMania tomorrow that they usually have a celebrity attached to. Yeah. Any thoughts on maybe this package before we?
I mean, it was very good. I missed the very end of it because I needed to get set up for our podcast, and they were into overrun territory at that point. But I saw nearly all of it, and yeah, I certainly got a good feel for it. Wonderfully produced, a big ticket celebrity talking about all the moments, and very well chosen clips, and very clear to me that they will use this tomorrow probably as the intro or part of the intro.
And somebody who we know, from his frequent appearances on WWE television is like a huge fan of all of this stuff. So, appropriate that they found a celebrity, one more celebrity to inject into this particular show. What did you think overall about tonight's edition of SmackDown? Did it get you more interested in the matches? Did it change your opinion about any of these builds? What are your thoughts?
Not really. It didn't change my opinion about the build to WrestleMania, particularly on the Pat McAfee front. Even if they pull some fantastic rabbit out of the hat that gets people excited tomorrow night, or even into Sunday, because Punk has got this beef with McAfee too, so, and I don't think they're doing that by accident. Yeah. So there's something happening there. It doesn't retrospectively for me change this as a bad build. I think and particularly the Cody Randy feud to me has been virtually ruined by it, particularly on the weekly TV. We'll see what happens over this weekend and into next week and into Backlash, but it hasn't been great. And as a final kind of hype for Mania, I kind of preferred the video packages to anything that they were doing in the arena.
I'm fascinated by it. Like this closing segment is mainly what I'll say about it. I'm somebody who I think already has a built-in interest in WrestleMania anyway, just simply because I just consider it relatively high stakes, and I'm somebody who follows every single show every year leading up to this particular one. So I good or bad, I kind of maintain an interest in WrestleMania anyway, just because I just find that there's always something interesting to talk about. But I thought they did a good job, certainly with Trick and Sami. That might have been maybe Brock and Oba, because it's been so minimal aside. Stephanie and Liv, you can also say. Maybe Trick and Trick and Sami might be my favorite build for WrestleMania
on the SmackDown side. I have enjoyed that build the most of the SmackDown programs, because as I'll not rehash it, the Cody stuff has been bad. And tonight, that segment was the standout for me in the arena, because, with the guy in the costume and everything and all the lines they had to deliver and stuff, there's an awful lot of stuff that could have just maybe not landed right and it really went so well. Right up to the point of the haluva kick spinning the gingerbread man's head 180 degrees. I thought that was it. That segment was the standout.
So just a reminder quickly of the two cards heading into WrestleMania tomorrow. And John Pollock and myself will be back for both nights of WrestleMania coverage here at youtube.com/postwrestling as soon as the shows are done. On night one, starting things off is I Show Speed teaming with Logan Paul and Austin Theory, taking on the Usos and LA Knight. That will be followed on the ESPN kickoff with, I guess you don't, not necessarily kickoff, but the first hour on ESPN2, Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre. Then on the main card, we've got for the Women's Tag Team Championship, a fatal four-way match. Becky Lynch taking on AJ Lee. We've got Seth Rollins versus Gunther. We've got Liv Morgan versus Stephanie Becerra. And in the main event, Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton with Pat McAfee. On the second night, we start things off with Brock Lesnar versus Oba Femi. Then we got our 6-way ladder match for the IC Championship. On the main card, you could say, we got Sami Zayn versus Trick Williams, Rhea Ripley versus Jade Cargill, The Demon Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio, and closing things off will be CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. Hopefully you guys join us for all of that coverage, but if you really like us, consider joining us in the Post Wrestling Cafe, where tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, John Pollock and I will be back to talk about Spring Break, GCW Joey Janela Spring Break 10, which is happening right now. The Sandman versus the Invisible Man. Brody Lee Jr. versus Joey Janela. And who knows what else. We'll also be talking about Bloodsport, which just took place and was attended by one Stone Cold Steve Austin. So plenty of discussion about that. Plenty of discussion we already had over the past week, talking about everything to do with WrestleMania, including our thoughts on the Hitchcock Memorial Show yesterday and a whole lot more. So this month, if you're a new member, it's only $4 if you want to join the Post Wrestling Cafe. 50% off for new subscribers. If you want to really, really get crazy, you might even consider paying $6 to join our double tier, where you get to hear John Pollock, Jack Wan, and Neal Flanagan deliver post wrestling daily news updates directly to your podcast feed almost every single day, this week aside, because we're so incredibly busy. But that plus book club hosted by Neal Flanagan and John Pollock as well. In addition to that, we got our patrons pick revealed this past Wednesday, where next week we will be reviewing on Rewind Away Spring Stampede 1994, as voted by almost 400 of you in the Post Wrestling Cafe. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here. Neal Flanagan, any final words?
Not really. Sign up, because you also get access to the archives. So you can, if you really want to get your value this month, you could dive into past episodes of Book Club and Rewind Away and so on. But I think you'll want to stick around.
That's it. Yes. Thank you very much, Neal. Appreciate that push. Thank you, all of you. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.